All right, everybody. This is another episode of the Western Rookie Podcast, and today is all about elk hunting and scouting for elk. And we have a returning guest on, Mr. Josh Sears. Josh, man, how we doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah,
Excited. Love talking about this stuff.
yeah, absolutely. What is Colorado like in the month of June?
Mm.
What's it like?
It's nice. It's kind of a mixed bag. Like early in the first few days, we were still getting some rain.
Mm,
In past years, even maybe some snow early, but it melts fast, so it's nothing too bad. But then it transitions. You start seeing the aspen trees sprouting, and you start seeing green grass, and just it gets you excited because the snow's melting and you can get out. The rivers are flowing nice, so you can get out and fish.
yeah,
um it's a wonderful month. It starts to warm up this season. It's been exceptionally warm, so um
yeah,
hopefully we get some more moisture here, but June's usually a pretty awesome month to get out and about.
yeah. I've never, excuse me, I've never been to Colorado in June or July. The only time, well, I take that back. I think a long time ago I went out in July and it was fairly warm. We spent some time in Denver, but then we went up into the mountains a handful of days and uh, and did some hiking and spent some time in the higher altitudes. Just gorgeous out there. Also, I'm going to tell you a quick story. We
Yeah.
were in Denver, Colorado at I don't know if I've told this story before, but we were at a bar, and this was in my previous life. We were at a bar in Denver, Colorado, and it was a bar that had like family style seating, so long tables, so people
Right.
could sit on each side, and then like a German type of bar, and then there was live music up front. And so, like, a lot of people still had their backs to the music. Well, we sat down at this table with another group of people, and then a group of guys who were very like athletic looking, and the younger vibe came in, and those guys were wearing like what's the Denver hockey team?
Oh,
What's
Colorado Avalanche.
the Avalanche, yes.
Mhm.
So, like, a group of those guys came in to the bar and they were already like rocked drunk. Okay. And so we were sitting down, and then another group of people were sitting at the same table with us, and they were sitting at the table next to us, and this girl like bumped her chair into this guy, and he was kind of getting annoyed by it. Like, she kept bumping. He took a full beer and he dumped it in her purse,
Wow.
and that started this gigantic fight between all of the guys uh at the that group and all of the guys in the that were on the hockey team, and it started this gigantic fight, and I just sat back and watched it. It was one of the coolest
Wow.
things I've ever seen. So
That's a
like,
pretty aggressive move
oh
to
yeah,
pour
yep,
beer in a purse.
oh yeah, oh my god. And then the woman picked her purse up and was like, look what he did to me. And then the her boyfriend or husband or whatever jumped across the table to grab him, and then it was just like a pile of just
Wow.
like fists and feet and kicks and throwing punches, and then the bouncers got involved, and
Jeez.
they had no mercy. They were throwing anybody who was close to them out. If Even if you weren't a part of it, they're just grabbing you and pushing you out of the door. So
Wow.
I was like, that's cool. That's pretty
That
cool.
doesn't happen too often.
No. And so I also got drunk later that night, and then I decided the next best thing to do the following day was to try and climb a 14er, and I
Oh,
did. It
man.
did not work. It did not work. Let's just say it. So
I couldn't imagine.
yeah,
That's probably pretty rough for you.
yeah, it was a bad day. I think I got altitude sickness. I also had a hangover, and so uh, the that was like my first introduction into altitude and how like it is undefeated. It's 100%
Yeah,
undefeated. So
definitely is.
all right. So before we, I don't know why I decided to tell that story because it has nothing to do with scouting elk, but Just wanted to feel a little relatable today. Maybe you've watched a fight. Have you ever seen a fight with the hockey team before
Not off the ice, just watching
on the
hockey.
ice? Yeah.
Like, yeah.
All right. I just want to send a huge shout out to the partners. I love how I'm sharing these crazy stories and then it's just like blatant advertising. I just like, I wonder if Wasp Archery listens to this and goes, what the hell is this guy talking about? Are we spending our money wisely? Right. But
Good intro.
I want to send a huge shout out to the partners over at Wasp Archery. Dude, I'm telling you, they have the broadheads for mule deer. They have the broadheads for whitetails, elk, antelope, whatever you're trying to bow hunt. My elk setup when I have been in the elk hunting in the past has been a Boss 4-blade fixed blade from Wasp, badass. And then when I go drop down to mule deer or whitetails or antelope, then I'm running the 3-blade jackhammer. So go check out wasparchery.com, discount code NFC20 for 20% off. Next on the list is Montana Decoy. So, these guys offer a variety of different species of decoys, right? You got mule deer, whitetail, antelope, elk. They have cows. They have different versions of like a rutting buck versus a calm doe versus an elk, a full body elk versus an elk butt or an elk head. And what those do is those allow you to get inside the quote unquote kill bubble of some of these some of these animals. So go check out montanadecoy.com. All right, enough of the BS. We're going to talk about elk scouting today. And the last conversation we had was kind of about people traveling east and even a service that you offer as far as going and scouting and telling people where elk are or sharing information with people about elk movement in different zones in Colorado and things like that. But I want to actually get into the specific details today of elk scouting. So I'm just going to ask you a question.
All right.
Where does elk scouting start?
Mhm. Yeah. For me, it definitely starts with e-scouting.
Mm-hmm.
Just pouring over maps. Onyx is a great tool. There's a lot of other tools out there. Google Earth, but definitely, I'd say let that do some work for you. You got to know where you're gonna go. You don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be wasting your time just going out. And so definitely e-scouting. Even in, I mean, you might know in advance what tag you're gonna have, or you might not know, but that doesn't mean you can't just look at maps. When you got 5, 10 minutes, I mean, it's on our phone now. So if you're distracted, you're bored, just pull up Onyx and start looking at different units. Just start putting pins on places that may have potential. Um, and we can get more into some of those details later. But definitely starts with e-scouting, and then even if you're like you went on your trip, you drove out to the mountains, start just taking a look around, look at the timber, look at the slopes, and you can start to just kind of find like that looks like a cool area. And then take that back to the maps and see if the map shows what you saw with your eyes and kind of just line it up. So
Yeah. Okay.
I guess just always continually being aware, continually just having your eyes open, whether it's maps or if you drive through Colorado a lot, just pay attention.
Yeah. Okay. So I am not going to Colorado at all this year, but let's just say hypothetically, I am going to draw or I have already drawn an elk tag for some random unit. And it is time for me to do what you said, and that's get on Onyx or a digital map and start the scouting process. What am I specifically looking for? And I know not all zones are created equal. Some are steep, some are more rolling. Um, and it's funny because I say that in Colorado, it doesn't seem like anything's really rolling, but it could, it could be. Talk to me a little bit about what am I specifically looking for when I'm e-scouting?
Yeah. So I think when you're starting out, you tags, we just found out a couple weeks ago what tags everyone has. So now is really time to, okay, I know I have a tag and it's going to be this unit.
Hmm.
To pull up your map, what I do is I kind of do a high level overview, zoom out a little bit and just start looking for spots that maybe don't have as many roads, or trails. Start just dropping pins, whether you think it might hold elk or not, as long as you think there's a chance there could be elk in there,
Hmm.
put a pin, and I usually mark them as like potential elk or possible elk area, and I usually use a specific color code for that. And you'll, if anyone were to have access to my Onyx, you'll see those pins all over. And for instance, like myself, this year, I drew Wyoming tags, general south, and I've never hunted there or been there, so I'm kind of going through the same process right now. So just pulling up, high level, start dropping pins, and then
Where
once
are
you
you
have,
dropping pins first? Are you dropping pins at parking locations or access roads, or are you starting actually in the terrain where you think the elk are living?
yeah, so I'm marking spots where I think is a potential elk area. So
Mm.
places where I would assume to find elk.
Yep.
But I'm not getting super detailed just yet. I'm looking for specific things like, is this an area where there's not a lot of roads? Is this an area, so that could be wilderness, it could be, you see on Onyx they have the map layer that's, purple, so that's like a roadless area.
Yep.
So that's a good area to start going into. And literally just like north facing slopes that look with good timber. Look for benches, look for saddles, look for, areas near the top of the mountain, like three-quarters up, that start to bench out, and then just put a pin and do this. Try to do. I mean, some units are big, some are small, so it depends. You can do it quick or
Yeah.
might take some more time, but literally try to go through the majority of that unit or units and do that, and that kind of gives you a starting point.
Okay.
And then from there, I kind of start zeroing in. So if I look and I have a bunch of these, I use blue. So if I have a bunch of blue pins in a similar area, then I start to, dial in and look at more details. Because if I just have one blue pin in a very obscure place on a map, I mean, is it going to be worth my time to actually go scout that? So I look for spots where I have kind of a conglomerate of pins. And then I'm like, okay, this area could be good. I need to figure out more details. I need to learn, how can I access this area?
Yeah.
How do I drive, and how much hiking do I need to get in? And then
Yeah.
kind of just go from there.
Okay. I have always heard that you need to be on north facing slopes. Okay. But I don't know why. Why are you suggesting people start by looking at north facing slopes?
I think it's, a general rule of thumb. I think typically the north facing slopes are going to be thicker timber.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be cooler, especially in the summer months and into the fall. They're going to be cooler. So, and if you ever hike out there and you're hiking, it's considerably cooler. If you're in the open
Mm-hmm.
and then you bomb in some timber, you can, you can feel like exceptionally cooler. And you're like, I would bet in here too. Like it just makes sense. It's
Yeah.
nice. So I think the main reason is how much cooler it is. It provides cover, it provides shade.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think that's just a general rule of thumb. But there's exceptions always. I mean,
And that's
my
in
buddy,
when does that change? All right. So for those who maybe don't understand, north facing slopes get the most sun because the ang or excuse me, north north facing slopes get the least amount of sun,
yeah,
correct? Right.
correct.
And so, do north facing slopes have the most cover, or is it just a shade thing? Like, are you going to be running into a lot of trees on north facing slopes as opposed to the south facing slopes, which I've hunted, they get the more sun and they get the most vegetation?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm not like a scientist, so but I do think just from being out there. Um, there's more deep, dark, tall timber on north facing slopes. Um, North and maybe some western slopes.
Hmm.
So it's not all just like strictly north. Mm, but generally, I would say there's more trees, more timber. It's
Yeah.
usually thicker. And why I'm not sure. I know what I know from being out there. So
Yeah.
that's just been my experience.
Yeah. Okay. So then with that said then, um, when you're e-scouting, I want to get into this next level e-scouting because a lot of the people who are listening to this are east of the Mississippi River. All right.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting on my toilet. My kids are yelling in the background, and I'm just like trying to just get a couple minutes to myself while I use the restroom. And I pull up Onyx of an area in Colorado that a buddy said I should check out. There's no pins on it. What are you looking first at satellite imagery or are you looking at hybrid where there's all the topo lines? And if so, what kind of topo lines are you looking for? What type of satellite imagery are you looking for specifically?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm a hybrid guy, so I like the topo with satellite, and
Yep.
that's my go-to. So topo lines, I'm looking for where they start to. So you look for areas kind of like three quarters towards the top of
Mm-hmm.
peaks, and you're looking for those topo lines to start getting wider. Um, so that typically is like a bench. It's going to be a flatter area. So you see topo lines closer together.
Yep.
And then as you go up the mountain, you'll see certain spots where they just get wide. Um, and in some cases, it's pretty significant on that degree of magnitude on the width. And that to me would excite me because that's what I would refer to as a bench
Mm-hmm.
or benchy area. And that's for whatever reason they like to bed in those areas. They like to hang out during the day. They like to go down to their feed and then work up to those benches. It's a good place for them to. And this is generally speaking, no pressure. I mean, when they're pressured, you'll find them on some steep slopes
Yeah.
because they're going to do whatever they can to survive. But definitely use those topo lines and look for benches, look for saddles. So like if you had two peaks, a high point and a high point, and then look for a low point between those two high points. That could be a travel pattern to get back and forth. So that's a nice feature to look for. So basically that's exciting me is benches and saddles. And then saddle yeah, again, those topo lines, you're gonna want them to be if it's super steep. I mean, it could be pretty gnarly to hike in there. And elk, they like the easiest way also, so they could very well just be finding a different travel pattern
Yeah.
if it's a deep mess.
Yeah.
And in terms of satellite imagery, I'm looking for again, it's you can pick out timber patches. So again, going back to north facing maybe some western or facing slope, and look for a lot of just what looks like timber. Yeah, and then if you can find a good timber area
Mm-hmm.
with some benches, that definitely be a place I would mark for potential.
Okay. And so does any of that information change based off of what tag you draw? And what I mean by that is I plan on going out for the last week in August for the opener of archery season or the first week of September for the opener of archery season or some the latest possible what when does the rifle close? Like early November?
I think it goes through late November,
Okay,
like
so
the season.
yeah, so all the way to November, where weather and temperatures are drastically different from September 1 opener. Um, does any of that scouting change for you if you're trying to, if you know you have a, let's say, a late season, the last possible rifle season as opposed to the very first archery season?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Yeah, I think the big kicker there would probably be elevation to start considering elevation.
Yeah.
Because as that adverse weather moves in, snow, they're gonna start pushing down the mountain. For instance, I mean, even I learned I had a pretty primo unit tag in 2023, and prior to that, I was always thinking elk are around 10,500 feet.
Yeah.
And then I went and hunted this area, and I was seeing elk all the way up at 13,500 feet.
Hmm.
I shot a bull at 12,000 feet, so that really opened my eyes to elk don't care. I mean, if there's
Yeah.
good feed up there and they have what they need, they're gonna be there. So that would be more like early season, probably through September, and then come October, once weather starts coming in, it's highly unlikely they're gonna still be that high.
Yeah.
So you want to start looking for similar features. Just start going lower in elevation. So that, and again, if you could find maybe a big piece of private, like a nice ranch, start looking behind the private in national forest, because a lot of times they'll push because that's the easy feed.
Hmm.
So in these later months, they're going to go for that feed, but then they might be moving off of the private onto the public to bed. So
Yeah.
definitely, I would think the main things there are elevation, because they need to be able to get to their food. And then obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but once the archers are done and they rouse up all those elk, then the rifle guys come in and they're gonna the pressure. So especially after the rut, the elk are gonna go into hidey holes. The bulls, they're
Hmm.
gonna go into hidey holes. They're gonna be very hard to find. So you're gonna want to look for pretty nasty areas, areas that you probably wouldn't normally think that you're gonna hike into.
Hmm.
So I'm talking like second rifle season, which is over the counter for
Hmm.
Colorado. There's going to be a lot of pressure. So that's where you need to get creative. Start looking at areas where it's hard to get to for a human, and chances are you might turn up some elk in there.
Yeah. I was, as you were talking there, I was looking at my Colorado pins of where I've hunted in Colorado in the past. I do not have a single pin of where I've spotted elk or elk sign below 10,000 feet. I was looking
Yeah.
at my topo lines. I'm looking at, what would it be? 10, 8, 2, 4, 6, 10, 6. And then over here, I'm I'm at 11. And then what's this one way over here? This one was crazy. Um, we heard a bugle a long ways away, and my buddy goes, "This might be our only chance. We're bulldoze. We're gonna just bum rush him." And so we were at when we heard it, we were at where were we at? When we were a long ways away. We were at 10-8, and then we in almost a straight line went to 11-4. 11,440 feet is where he was bedded. And
Wow.
he was bugling at every bugle that we would send his way, but he was bedded, so he wasn't moving, but he was still
Yeah.
bugling from his bed. And we bum rushed him. Me and my buddy did paper rock scissors for who was going to shoot, and he beat me. So I took a giant loop, like to backdoor him, and my buddy got into position, and then my other buddy dropped way far away, and he this is crazy, dude. He started taking branches and big logs and just beating the shit out of them and trying to break them and just pushing stuff away and bugling and cow calling and all this stuff until that bull got so fed up with what was going on that he just almost sprinted down the down elevation in this thicker timber. And unfortunately, my buddy's mechanical broadhead did not open and bounced right off his shoulder. Crazy. Um,
Ah,
so there's that. So
that's tough, but that was a good strategy to
yeah,
deploy, making noise and getting him agitated. So
yep,
that's a pretty cool experience.
yep, absolutely. So with that said, there is a so that there obviously is a different method to take for how do I put this? A different method to take for whatever tag you hold and what month that tag is in.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. All right, cool. Cool. Tornadoes or the storm sirens are going off right now, and I would not be surprised if my boy comes upstairs. He's like, "Dad, is a tornado coming?" I don't think there's a tornado, but I think it's just like thunderstorms. So I just want you to be aware of that. All
All
right.
right.
All right. So you've done your e-scouting, right? And one thing that I've learned about going out west is you could be the best e-scouter ever. You go in, you're like, "Oh dude, this looks elky." Drop a pin. "Ooh, dude, look at this meadow." Drop a pin. And you go there, and there's two things that could possibly happen. Number one, you get to the trailhead and there's 15 other dudes there. Number one.
Yeah.
Or you get in there and there's a herd of cattle in that meadow,
Yeah.
right? That happens all the time, everywhere. My first year ever going to South Dakota, I was like, dude, look at these spots, these river bottom spots. They're going to climb up into these bluffs and then they're going to come down. Dude, look, it's so money. I show up and the grass is grazed down to the roots and there's 10,000 cattle,
Dang.
head of cattle in these spots. I'm like, now what? Right. So how would you suggest a guy go about finding like the most multiple locations? Because your plan A more than likely isn't always going to work. How do you expand your plan to have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K? You know, like whatever,
Yeah.
whatever goes wrong, you have a backup for it.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's a great thing to you're gonna want to have. I mean, we go back to time, so time is valuable, and if you are fortunate enough to get out and have a scouting trip prior to season, you're gonna want to be most efficient with that time as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally like to have. I mean, we create hunting plans. So why are we not creating a scouting plan? If we're going to devote the time and drive or fly or however you're going to come out and take a trip just for scouting, have a plan. So
Mm-hmm.
that goes back to I was kind of getting there with the e-scouting thing because yeah, e-scouting is just a start, and like you said, you gave some great examples of what can happen when you e-scout and then you actually go get boots on the ground. It can be very dejecting at times. So that's why when you are e-scouting, look for those areas where you do have multiple pins. Because like I said before, if you have just like one remote pin, and you're like, I'm gonna go hit this place, and
Mm-hmm.
then you spend like a day to get in there, and yeah, there's cattle grazing there. In Colorado, I've seen some cattle pretty high, like
Yeah.
up over 10,000 feet. And you're like, what are cows doing up here? But they will be up there, so it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
how
yeah,
do you do that? Because the reason I'm asking is there was one year where I put on like, dude, I want a ridiculous amount of miles on my truck, right? And
yeah,
I was hunting out of my truck. So it was okay. Like I had a topper on. I slept in my truck. I slept on the side of the road. I slept on BLM. I slept on national forest ground, all of the, all, or grasslands. And I just pulled up, slept wherever I was at. No big deal as far as lodging is concerned. But I was like picking spots that were 50, 60, 70 miles away. And when I would hit a spot and go, oh, it's overrun by cattle or I'm not seeing what I want here, I'd get in and I would travel a shit ton of miles to another spot, even though I know I didn't like pick apart all of that stuff.
yeah.
And so how do you try to keep it close is your main goal find the elk at all costs?
Yeah, that's my main goal. I mean, and then you got to consider what type of hunt that you're prepared to do.
Great
And
point.
then you kind of want to tailor your e-scouting to that type of hunt. So if you're going to road hunt, then pick points that are closer to roads.
Yep.
If you want to get away from roads, then try to find areas that are away from roads. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of tailor your e-scouting. Once you start dialing it in, you find a point that's like in the middle of a wilderness area. You're like, well, I'm road hunting, so that's not going to help me.
Yeah.
Um, so tailor it to the type of hunt you want to do. That's where your goals and your expectations and I mean, it comes down to a lot of things, physical ability, all that stuff. Take it into consideration when you are e-scouting. And then what I do, so like for instance, I'm going to be going to Wyoming soon for something very similar, and scouting. So what I'm doing is I'm finding areas where I have multiple pins of potential areas
Mm-hmm.
because I'm going to try to find elk at all costs because I want to make that the most of the tag. I want to do what I have to do to find the elk now so that I can actually be hunting those elk come season. So how I'm going to do that, I'm going to multiply. I'm going to have multiple pins in a common area so that like I can park my truck here, and from this area I could check out this ridge, this drainage. So by parking in one central location, you can hike to multiple areas and scout multiple spots at a time. So you're not just one and done, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you mentioned physical ability, all right? Physical ability is, dude, I thought I was in great shape when I went to Idaho. Idaho took advantage of me, basically. I felt used when I when I
Yeah,
left Idaho, okay? Um, you get out to Colorado. I can remember going up to Colorado um, for the first time. This wasn't as a hunter, but this was as a trip, like with my dad and my brother. And I just was looking at how huge everything is, right?
yeah,
How do you, other than somebody telling you, how do you look at these topo lines and go like, dude, I would not recommend this for a first time hunter. Because sometimes people bite off more than they can chew is what I'm getting at.
de- definitely. Yeah, so if you're talking about a super steep area, yes, that's something that you're probably not going to be wanting to hike into. So maybe look for a spot. Maybe if you're hiking in on a south slope, hike from a different area that's not as steep and look for, but it still leads to the same general spot that you're wanting to get eyes on.
Yeah.
So try to find an alternate route up, even if it's longer, take it. I mean, the whole point of scouting is to learn and
Mm-hmm.
figure out the area. So while you're taking that long route up, you might see some stuff that you weren't expecting. You might see elk sign on that south facing slope. Like my buddy this past season, he killed his bull, a giant herd bull on a south facing slope. So elk are going to be where they are. They're going to be where you find them. So just because it's a south facing slope, that's not like a hard no.
Yeah.
It's why we scout. So you learn, and then you'll know for a fact whether you should pay attention to that area or not. So definitely look for alternate routes, and then because yeah, I mean, if it's a steep grind up, what's the chance that elk are going to be taking that route up? I
Yeah.
think I think the goal is to think like an elk, think like an animal. They live out there. That's their home, and
Mm-hmm.
they're finding easy ways to move back and forth. They're not taxing themselves every day to go up and down this super steep slope just to get food and water.
Yeah.
So start looking for game trails and then take the game trail up. And sometimes I've found two Onyx shows their top of lines are really close together. So you would say, oh, that's steep. But then you get out there and you're like, this isn't as steep as it looks, or it could be the opposite of that. It's supposed to be less steep and more benchy, but it's still pretty steep. And so it can kind of be misleading at times too. So that's why we get boots on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the boots on the ground is easier said than done for someone like me.
Yeah,
You live in
yeah,
Colorado, right? You're one state
yeah,
away from Wyoming, right?
yeah,
So let's say somebody does get they trick their wife, or they're like, hey, you want to go to Colorado? Yeah, I love it, let's go. And then this guy sneaks out for a while, he gets a day or two to go and check some of these pins that he's laid down. What is the biggest thing that you need to know when you're actually out there? Let's say tomorrow my wife goes, hey, I tell you what, why don't you go to Colorado and you scout a couple days and then you can come back, right? What are things I should be accomplishing when I do verify pins and put boots on the ground for my e-scouting locations?
yeah. That's a good question. So one, you're gonna want to find access. You're going to want to find a way in, where you're going to park, how you're going to access that area to get to the pin. Um, and then when you're going through on your way to the pin, start looking for sign. Start looking for heavily used game trails, and and you'll kind of get a feel for what's heavily used and what's not heavily used. All for big animals.
Hmm.
So if they're moving through a lot, you're going to see a lot of sign. You're going to see old poop, new poop, worn down paths, multiple paths. Maybe not just one, but there's going to be multiple. And it's going to just be like trucks driving back and forth through the area.
Yeah.
Start looking for as you get higher in elevation, and not always, but start looking for rubs, especially if you find, say, you find a big meadow or a park, and that's your destination that you want to go get eyes on. Um, Start looking around the park to see if you see rubs, rub activity. And I mean like multiple, not just one or two, but like dozens, old rubs, fresher rubs. Some of the rubs will still have hair on the trees, so you can kind of get an idea. So if you start seeing a lot of sign, old, new, wherever in between, that's a spot where you could probably have confidence that you're going to find some animals in there, or animals are at least in there at some point during the season.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so, as someone who has only been on what, four elk hunts my entire life, or three, how do I know, like, oh, awesome, this is an elk trail in June? What does that mean though? Because
Yeah.
my tag doesn't allow me to hunt until September. How do I
Yeah.
know if the elk are going to be there? What do you typically see, as, and this is kind of, sign is great. It tells you at some point in time an elk was here. Let's say that whether it's a droppings, or it's a print, or it's an old elk rub from a bull. What have you seen in the course of your time scouting at where elk are at throughout the course of a year?
Yeah. So typically, if you're looking for bulls, especially for September, you're going to see a lot of sign higher up the mountain. And then on your way up, you might see some open areas, some meadows, some parks that will show signs of rut activity. Elk, I mean, generally they like to rut in open areas, because they want to be able to see. Bulls want to be able to see other bulls, so they prefer those open areas. So if you're looking for a rutting area, then you're going to see a lot of sign from multiple animals like cows, because they're going to probably be living
Yeah.
lower down the mountain. So especially in like north slopes, you're going to find their bedding area. You'll even see where they're bed. Like my wife comes with me from time to time, and I take her and I'm just like pointing bed, 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 bed. And you'll start to see them. You'll start to see like up against trees. It's just flattened out, and
Mm-hmm.
you can see dirt. It literally looks like a nice bed. I wouldn't want to sleep in it, but it looks like a nice bed for an animal.
Right.
So you'll start seeing multiple beds, a lot of sign. Like some of these times, cows are probably going to be in groups of, I don't know, probably like five or more. And that's a lot of animals, and they're big animals. So you're going to see a lot of that probably lower.
Yeah.
Um, and you'll see tracks like around water. So you'll get an idea. Is this like one or two tracks, or is this a bunch of tracks? And so that will tell you that's a water source that they're using. So then as you go higher up, you'll start seeing more goal activity. You'll
Mm-hmm.
start seeing runs and maybe beds still, but maybe just a couple, because
Mm-hmm.
they'll be in bachelor groups, especially in the summer. So they'll still be together, but just not as many of them.
Yeah.
So different elevations, you'll see kind of different things.
Yeah. So let's say I'm scouting, and I understand that elk are higher in the summertime, leading up to the season, than they are during the season. When do you start to see the elk come down in elevation?
Like permanently or for
Just
the
like,
during the
I guess
year?
I'm talking about throughout the year.
Yeah. Okay. So I notice one, I'm a big shed hunter guy. So when I'm out there in May, You start seeing a bunch of animals lower because usually I'm looking for areas below 10,000 feet for sheds. So you'll start seeing a lot of animals lower during that time of year. But again, I think this goes back to, and I don't
Hmm.
spend much time rifle hunting. So, but I do think once the weather comes in, um, they're going to start pushing down and they're going to start pushing down to where the feed is to where they can access feed easy because
Hmm.
it's going to be harder once the snow starts piling up. It's going to be harder for them to go through that snow. They're going to be more vulnerable to predators because they're going to be slower. So they're going to push down to where there's less snow, where they can feel safer, where they have more feed. Um, so I would say probably as soon as that weather moves in. I mean, if it's like one storm, sometimes even in September, we'll get a foot of snow, but
Yeah.
that's probably not enough to make them push down permanently. They might push down to get out of the snow, and then like days later, that storm goes through, the snow's going to melt, and they'll be right back up at
Yeah.
over 12,000 feet. So once the snow comes and stays, so we're talking October, probably mid to late October, depending on the type of winter we're going to have. Then that's really, I think, personally, what is the main factor that's going to start
Yeah.
driving them down the mountain. And then
Yeah.
they're going to stay down low probably until the spring. Once that snow line starts receding, they're going to follow the green grass up the mountain. So they'll probably be down low from like October, November until April, May, and then they'll start pushing back up.
So a lot of it just has to do with snow. And if it's a low snow season, then they remain higher.
I would say so. It's like, for instance, this year, um, we had a very mild winter. I mean, I'm born and raised Colorado over 40 years, and this is probably one of the most mildest winters I've ever experienced.
Mhm.
So you kind of see it with during shed hunting year, normal winter, average winter, you'll find those sheds um, lower. This year they're kind of more spaced out, more sporadic. You'll find
Mhm.
it. I've been finding some sheds over 10,500 feet, which is kind of shocking to me. But
Yeah.
just based on that knowledge there, I'd say the milder winter, they're going to stay up higher. So
Yeah.
this season coming up could be a mixed bag
Yeah.
because our winter was so mild.
Yeah. Okay. Does that spread um does that spread elk out, or when because obviously during the rut you got bulls trying to herd up cows and like herd bull mentality, whatever. But is there is there a weather impact that gets elk herded up quicker or slower, to where, so for example, everybody talks about whitetail hunting in the Midwest, and heavy snow and a good food source means that deer are going to be congregated in bigger herds around that food source. Okay. Is
Yeah.
there a scenario where elk are gathered in bigger or smaller herds?
Yeah, I think what you just said, I think it can apply to elk as well
Mm-hmm.
because they're gonna go where the food is easy to get. So, say they're going to a piece of private to get food during the winter months,
Yeah.
you'll see huge herds of elk out there.
Yeah.
Um, and then in different cases like this year where food is more abundant, the snow is not nearly as heavy,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll see probably smaller groups. I mean, generally they're herd animals, so they're still going to stay within their smaller groups. It's rare to see like a cow elk by herself.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it, but I think it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
So generally you're going to see smaller groups, but I would think if it's a harsh winter, you're going to see a higher number concentrated in smaller areas.
Yeah.
And then the opposite if it's a mild winter.
Gotcha. All right. We've talked about the e-scouting, right? And what to look for. We've talked about now, maybe not, you get a trip out there just to scout. And we've talked a little bit about locating the roads, locating the parking areas or the trailheads or whatever. We've talked about where the elk are at in specific times of year, and we got a game plan. that's put together. Okay. How important is additional scouting when you get out there? Let's say day one hunting season is, maybe you go out there and you're a day before uh, opener, or you go out there, season's already in full effect. And how important is scouting during the hunt in order to, maybe it's like, dude, I just need to cover miles. I need to get a ton of information. How important is that? Or do you change your approach during the actual hunting season?
Yeah, I think you got to do what you got to do. So me personally, I I try not to have to scout during the hunt, but I'm different because I have the luxury of going out and
Mm-hmm.
scouting before the hunt. So let's say if you're coming from Georgia, I don't know why, but you're coming from Georgia and you don't have time or money or however you just can't come out for a scouting trip before season.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're coming out, season already started, I would recommend to definitely, you hate to do it, but I think it's necessary to dedicate a day, maybe 2 days, maybe, and learn the unit, learn the area, learn the roads, drive around. Because even like if you're driving around during the day, everybody else is out hunting, you'll get an idea where people are congregating, what trails they're using, and then you can use that pressure to your advantage.
Yeah.
So definitely devote that time to learn. We're always trying to learn, whether it's during season. I mean, our goal predominantly is going to be to kill an elk. So we
Right.
want to learn and put ourselves with the best opportunity to do that. So definitely put in the time to learn the unit. Say it just gives you options. It gives
Right.
you the ability to pivot when things happen.
Yeah.
You show up, there's a ton of people. So hey, when I was driving through the other day, no one was over here. So go over there.
Yeah.
That's probably where the elk are going to be given the pressure. So
Yeah. What are some
definitely.
what are some things that you feel are overlooked? Of all the things that we've talked about today, what are things that people, maybe they get lazy and they overlook in the scouting process?
Yeah, so for me personally, I start, so I told you what I zero in on and I get excited about benches and
Yep.
saddles and all that, but
Hmm.
sometimes I don't always look at the vegetation. So like I'll go to a spot, this spot looks awesome on the map, but then I get there and it's like a cluster of aspens, and anybody who's walked through a thick aspen patch knows how hard that is and knows like you're just going to be bushwhacking.
Hmm.
There's probably not going to be animals in there. So I think personally, that's a big one for me is keying in on the type of vegetation. There's been other cases where I'll see just what looks like a big open park, and I get there and it's covered with like chest high or head high alders. It's like you can't even walk through it. So
Yeah.
try to take the time and maybe line that up with Google Earth because that might show you a little bit more of the vegetation, especially during the time of year. Onyx, in my experience, maybe I'm not doing something right, but it hasn't always been um, the greatest for seeing what type of vegetation is there.
Yeah.
So Google Earth might be a better tool. And then I think also, I know in our previous discussion we talked a little bit about the idea of, oh, I got to be in deep. I want to do this backcountry hunt.
Hmm.
And I think just that mentality makes you overlook a lot of quality spots just because this spot might be a half mile off a road, but that could be a really good spot. So don't, I mean, take the time to consider all of those areas. And
Yeah.
if you want to go in deep, cool, going deep. But then maybe if you don't find anything back there, maybe that's when you try to say, well, maybe they're just hanging up in this area because of pressure or
Yeah.
because everybody else is overlooking this spot, driving right by the elk. That's where they're going to be. So I'd say that's another big one too, is just certain areas based on proximity.
Yeah. The only other thing I really want to talk about is during the scouting process, the importance of water and
Mm.
where water is in June versus or on a scouting mission e-scouting mission that you're doing while you're sitting in a waiting room versus where water is actually at in September and October when you go out to hunt elk?
Yeah, that's a good point to talk about. Water can be tricky because again, if you look at Onyx, you'll see like almost every drainage shows that it has water.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, there's water here, there's water here, there's water over there, there's water everywhere. That's not the case when you actually get out there. There's maybe 5% of those drainages actually have water.
Yeah.
Um, so that's where you need to start trying to find large sources of water, large creeks, well-known creeks, well-known trailheads by creeks. You can even maybe look at certain features if you can zoom in on satellite imagery enough. And you can kind of just look at that time. So look at the September, October months and see if that creek is still running or not. Satellite imagery on Google Earth will likely show that. It's going to be a little more tricky when you're getting up on those north facing slopes and into the drainages. So I mean, I've made that mistake before. You get up high. There's obviously water for the animals. They may be traveling miles to get to that water, but for a human, it's hard to access water. So you're looking at a full day with rationing your water, and it can be very difficult to stay hydrated. So um, that's a tough one. And I'd say just look for large sources because then you'll know this creek. It's a huge creek. It's still going to be running that time of year.
Yeah.
And those smaller drainages, maybe not, but don't count on. Oh, for sure, there's water in there because look, it shows that this drainage has water. I would not try not to make that mistake.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Is there anything else that we have not talked about from a scouting standpoint, whether it is e-scouting or boots on the ground scouting that we should discuss?
I think also what's important if you look at it from just an approach of just becoming a better outdoorsman.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily I got to go scout because I got to fight animals. You're out there because one, I mean, for me, it's a great time to connect with God and just it's an awesome time to be out. It's an awesome time to learn. It's an awesome time to just walk around and learn and
Mm-hmm.
do cool stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say look at the map, and then if you have the chance to get out, even if it's during season, start putting those pieces together and say, oh, this is that this is that landmark I saw on the
Mm-hmm.
map. This is the landmark in person and start putting that puzzle together. It makes you better at reading maps. It makes you better in the field at just being aware of your
Yeah.
surroundings. It just helps you learn navigation. Because I mean, the better you are at reading maps, the better you are at learning how to navigate out there in the field, the better outdoorsman you're going to be. And ultimately, that's going to make you a better hunter.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome, man. This has been a really good conversation that I think is going to help a lot of people. I really appreciate it. Now, I do want to talk to or ask you the question. You do have a scouting service for the state of Colorado where you go out and you're scouting public land and you are helping people gather information and you have a service. What's the name of that service and where can people find out more information about what it is that you do?
Yeah, great. It's the name is Boots on the Ground, and there is a website. It's
Mm-hmm.
bootsonthegroundservices.com. And yeah, basically we're providing physical boots on the ground. So it's not just recommending you certain areas. It's we're gonna check these areas and we're gonna give you that confidence
Yep.
if this is a good area or not. So pretty much everything we just talked about, if it sounds if it sounds like a good idea for you to do, but you don't necessarily have the time or the ability to come on a scouting trip before your hunting season, take a look at our website. There's different packages. Even we include game camera services as well. So, and then even if you don't know what you want, but you know you might need some help scouting, there's also the ability for custom packages. So we
Yeah.
kind of just try to tailor to the goals of the hunter.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Josh Sears. Man, I really appreciate your time
Yeah.
today and dropping some knowledge bombs on us, man. I know that I am that person who needs to spend, like, I have a lot of Wyoming preference points stacked up. So I'm going to need to be scouting my butt off before I start that process of, applying and turning in those preference points to hunt. And so I know that there's a lot of time behind which I hate, but don't hate. Like I try to get away from my phone as much as possible, but
Yeah.
I also know that I'm going to need to be on it when I start pulling these tags. So it's in my future. I know it's a necessity if you want to try to be successful out there. So I'm really looking forward to the hunts and things like that. But I appreciate your time, man. Thank you very much. And I'm sure you'll be on again at some point.
Yeah. Awesome, man. It's always fun to talk with you and just try to give back and share any experience I've had.
Yep.
So I appreciate the opportunity.